see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, from Brooklyn.
Hey, isn't he?
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
What's up, everybody? It's another episode of Coast to Coast. I am your host, Pags, and not sure where everybody else is at, but I wanted to get started here because, there was some things to talk about as of yesterday. Yesterday, obviously, I was not on the show, and not sure exactly if there was a good show or not. I didn't get the chance to watch it because I was all around the city yesterday doing stuff for the Big Dill, which is like a pickle palooza that is going to be coming to Xfinity Live on June 15th. So if you guys are not doing anything that day, I believe it's the day before Father's Day, and you like pickles, come on out and enjoy a day full of pickles and such like that. So I got to go around, excuse me, the city yesterday and just do different shots. We went to the Rocky statue. We were at City Hall. We went to Love Park. We went to Reading Terminal Market. I tell you, if you haven't taken a tour of the city, even if you've lived in this city, and you do that kind of tour in a day's time, the first thing you'll realize is that parking is a little bit of a pain in the ass. So definitely figure out maybe a different way to get around rather than drive. But secondly, it is really awesome to kind of see all the different things. You could spend 3 hours just people watching the Rocky statue and the Rocky steps. I have to imagine that people run those steps every day, uh, all day long. And it doesn't matter whether it's raining, doesn't matter whatever is going on like that. And it's fun. It's good to watch that. So, and it's even more interesting when you watch a big pickle run up the Rocky Steps. So, all interesting kind of stuff right there. And then, of course, yesterday, last night, I went down to the University of Delaware and was part of the bartending crew who went as part of the Eagles Autism Foundation uh, fundraiser with 302 Birds, and Club 215 was there as well. And we had a great time drinking and watching the Sixers game, which was a very good game to watch. I mean, it was interesting all the way across the board. Watching the Sixers like struggle in the first half, come back in the second half. I mean, they were down by as many as 14 points at one point, and was able to come back. And within the last couple minutes of the game, it was like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then ultimately, the Sixers wind up beating the Heat. I think the final score was 105, 104. Uh, Literally, they got that three. There was like 0.3 seconds left. They throw the inbound. The inbound gets touched by Embiid. By the time it bounces out of bounds, the clock is up. Game over. Sixers win, and they will be facing the New York Knicks on Saturday. But a very interesting game to watch all the way around. I mean, did go back and forth a little bit. It looked like the Heat had the answer defensively for the Sixers in the first half, literally just holding them to 39 points. It really was a tough thing to watch. It was just that turnovers that were going on. I think that the Sixers were a little nervous, never being in that type of situation. The Heat made it to the finals last year as one of the play-ins. So, ultimately, it was a fun time to kind of see how that all occurred. And then, you know, come second half, I think they had 12 turnovers in the first half and only 4 turnovers in the second half. So they really were able to put it all together and, you know, come out with the W there. Yeah, like I said, 105, 104. Ultimately, like I said, the Sixers, they were down by one in the first quarter. Second quarter, 28-17, and only scoring 39 points and a half was a really big deal. Jimmy Butler, though, however, got hurt, and I guess it was in the second quarter at some point, and you could say it didn't affect him, but you could tell that he was favoring his knee throughout the rest of the game, and he only wound up with 19 points. Like I said, that's very not Jimmy Buckets like. You know what I mean? He's definitely, when it comes to playoff games, he likes to take those games over, and it just, you could tell that that knees was affecting him a little bit, and he just wasn't able to be 100% himself. Joel Embiid, I believe, led all scores. Actually, no, did not have all scores. Hero had the most points with 25 points and 9 assists for the Heat. Sixers, you had Joel Embiid with 23 points, Maxi with 19 points. But the guy who really did help out most in this win was Batum. Batum, I may have seen his name before. I don't know. Like it says, it's been interesting to kind of see, but that guy was just deadly from 3 point range. He was just knocking them down. I think he went 6 for 10 from 3 point range. I think he had 3 points in the first half, 17 points in the second half, and he was like the lockdown defender. When Jimmy Buckets was starting to get hot, he went to him. When I think Hero started to get a little hot, he got on him. He was that guy who was just able to be very versatile, go all over the place. You could tell Embiid didn't have it 100% yesterday, and it was, I mean, it's Embiid's going to get his, and he did make. I think he took 4 3 pointers. He made a very big clutch three. Of course, it was a wide open three. And I tell you, those wide open threes don't always go down the way you think they are. But he had a wide open three and he nailed it. And interestingly enough, they do say that it was like, because the Sixers, it was going back and forth and they weren't getting a lot of going on. And the crowd changed when they got the brickin' for chicken. One of the Heat defenders missed 2 foul shots. Everybody got all excited because free chicken for everybody. And the next thing you know, uh, they wound up the next basket, I think, was a three, and the crowd became energized, and that spawned. I believe at that point they were down, like it was like 59 to maybe 48, and that three made it 59-51. And next thing you know, it was, they came back on strong. I don't think they took the lead until the fourth quarter, though, like late in the fourth quarter, where they started to actually come back and actually took the lead from the Heat. It went back and forth a few times. I think that the lead change was somewhere around 15 to 20 different lead changes in that last 7 minutes, because it was like bam, 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 bam. They were just going back and forth with the lead changes. I might be exaggerating. It may not have been that many, but it did go back and forth a little bit. And then ultimately, uh, the Heat started missing some shots. They got what I call the pucker. And they started to pucker up. It started to get a little tight, and the shots weren't falling down. There was a number of times where it was like they were going up for layups, bouncing the ball, bouncing the ball, bouncing the ball, and it not going in. And it wound up the Sixers getting that ball. They were getting a lot of offensive rebounds too. That was one of the things that I took notice to. That the Sixers on the defensive boards were giving up a lot of second and third opportunities in those situations, and ultimately the Heat was not able to make that occur, and the Sixers wind up pulling it out at the very end, and now will be going to face the Knicks. Starting on Saturday at 6 o'clock. They will be starting up at Madison Square Garden for the best of seven series. Sixers versus the Knicks. In the second game of the play-in, obviously I was driving home during that, and it was interesting to me because the Bulls came out ridiculous. It was like they were up by 18 by the end of the first quarter. They had scored 40 points. It was probably one of the best quarters that they had had in a long time. And Atlanta just looked like, yep, we're just going to throw this towel in. We're not really interested at all. And then ultimately, they started to come back that second quarter. It was like 40-22 in the first half, so they were up by 18 points. By the end of the first half, it had gotten a lot closer. It was 73 points by the Chicago Bulls, which was a lot because you could tell nobody's playing this, but it was 67 points at that point. So it was like 73-67. They made it close, and then Chicago just pulled away, and ultimately wind up winning this game by 15 points. It wasn't even really close in the second half. The Atlanta made a couple of small charges, but it wasn't anything crazy. Chicago winds up winning their play-in game, and now they will travel to Miami on Friday. I believe it's the 7 o'clock game where they will go up against the Heat to see who gets that number 8 seed and will move on to play the Boston Celtics. Obviously, I wasn't here yesterday, so I'll talk a little bit about the play-in games from that as well before I get into hockey, which was going on. There he is. There's Bo right there. That will be a good game. I'm interested to see, especially with Embiid, not Embiid, with Jimmy Buckets favoring that knee. I wonder if how much he's going to be. Is he going to be at 100%? Is he going to be at 90% or 80%? Um, I didn't realize, Bo, you weren't coming. So I'm on here for right now, seeing what's happening here. Didn't know that there was anything special. Don't know what's up with StatGuy. Hopefully he'll show up here. I know Jay is still moving in and worrying about his knee, so that's all right. We got anything happening here. Come on in and get to listen to what I got to say. Anyways, uh, Tuesday's games, the Lakers and the Pelicans. Zion Williamson goes out hurt in this game, and I think that's what was really the big deal there. Obviously, had 40 points in the game, but winds up leaving the game hurt, and that really kind of sealed their fate. The Lakers wind up winning that game. So New Orleans is going to have a second chance. I'm not sure if they are, well, obviously they're playing the Sacramento Kings, who beat the Golden State Warriors, who looked like crap. I thought the Warriors would come out and play a much different game. They did not. That game, they looked horrible. And ultimately, the Sacramento Kings, takes care of business and gets them going. Good morning, Sonia. Good to see you guys. There we go. We got a recruiting football commentator here, too. Welcome to the show, Sonia. Good to see you. So, literally, doing the show by myself for the moment. Not sure if anybody else is going to come on or what have you, but I'm ready to go. I'm always prepared for this. So ultimately, Zion and the Pelicans are going to be playing against the Sacramento Kings. Kings are favored in this, which makes me think that Zion is out with, he's out with the hamstring. So, and that's going to be that's a tough loss for them. Unfortunately, this was one of those seasons where he was able to play most of the games in the season. To go out like that with a hamstring pull in that game after scoring 40, obviously he was having his way with the Lakers, but couldn't finish the game. And ultimately is now going to be. Gotcha. Bo is having Xfinity or Spectrum or whatever they're called over there. How much Bo loves talking about his Wi-Fi, and that's just a beautiful thing that I'm sure I'll hear about more tomorrow when this all comes down. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. He actually was really killing him. Like I said, 40 points in the game, and he left in the third quarter with that injury. So it really is a bummer that it winds up happening, because ultimately, with him staying in there, they'd likely win that game and could move on. But now that he's going to be out, I don't know that. Pulling a hamstring is really a big deal. Obviously, I don't know how bad that is. He's definitely missing this next game, and I just don't know that the Pelicans can do it without him. He is such, he is really that driving force of that team. And without him on there, I just don't know that the Pelicans have enough firepower to really, take care of business against the Kings. So it looks like to me that the Kings could uh, go up against OKC, who is not part of Seattle anymore. That being said, should they cut him? They just gave him a contract. It, unfortunately, here's how I think about this. Excuse me. He is the reason why anybody is going to watch basketball in New Orleans. There really isn't anybody else on that team that I even know about. So the thought that he is, going to get cut or maybe traded, they would wind up having to move that team because nobody else cares. I do keep rubbing it in. I do keep rubbing it in. I just because I know that we have a lot of Seattle followers here, and I just want to remind them how they got screwed, from the NBA, and that they should write a very nasty letter to the NBA on a daily basis on how they do not have a team, and that they should bring basketball back to Seattle because the NBA would be a much better place with Seattle as one of the teams. And who knows? If they were to get rid of Zion, I mean, you might be able to get the Pelicans because there ain't nobody going to watch in New Orleans at all. So, yeah, they have had a bad team in general, and ultimately, I don't think it's going to get any better now. Like I said, once they lose to the Kings, it's again Zion's going to get blamed here. However, he had a great season. So I feel that it's going to be, it's a shame that he didn't be able to finish that game, especially like I said, after scoring 40 points in that game. You know, that was awesome. You know what I mean? He was taking care of business against the Lakers, and like I said, literally doing it on his own. I mean, he scored just about half the points of the team in general. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Angel Hernandez, our favorite umpire in Major League Baseball. We'll talk about that a little bit today as well because I've got some thoughts about that. But yeah, we talked a little bit of basketball. Like I says, we'll be able to talk a little bit more tomorrow as we get into the final play-in games, so that they could say, okay, now we've got the full, you know, complement of who's going to be uh, 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7. We already know that that's already a thing. The Lakers are in there as the number 7 seed going up against Denver. I feel like Denver wins that series hands down. And ultimately, the Sixers and the Knicks are going to be it. That's going to be a very interesting series moving forward. So we'll see how that comes into play here moving forward. Yeah, like I said, Steven, yeah, we got plenty to say about Angel Hernandez. I think that you know I have a personal opinion about that, but I have to get to hockey. I have to talk a little bit of hockey here. Uh, Obviously, the season ends today, which amazes me that there I know that it goes very late. Obviously they normally end on a Sunday where everybody plays. The fact that they had this staggered here, where the Flyers were over 2 days ago, and you know some of these teams ended 2 days ago, and there's still 2 days left of hockey is weird. That's weird to me. Like what, somebody making the schedule screwed up, which isn't a big surprise to me because Gary Bettman sucks as a commissioner of the NHL. But I feel like that they just don't have anybody else who even knows how to be a commissioner. I feel like that would have been a great job for the late Ed Snyder had he I'm sure he didn't want it because he was CEO. He really was the CEO of Comcast. Comcast got started specifically from the Flyers and Ed Snyder, and ultimately that's a real thing. But that all being said, the Flyers, were playing on Tuesday night. I was there at the game against the Capitals, and during that game, the Red Wings were playing as well against the Montreal Canadiens in their back-to-back, and it was a very interesting 15 seconds of time. The Flyers playing a really good game against the Capitals. The score is 1-1. Ovechkin, who has really been carrying the Capitals throughout these last couple of weeks. He had 20 goals 3 weeks ago. He ends his season with 31 goals, and he scored most all those goals in 3 weeks. Like I said, he was having a down season. All of a sudden, he's got over 30 goals in a matter of 3 weeks' time. He winds up scoring like 11 goals, which was it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Imagine if he had done that all season long, the Capitals would have been unbeatable. But the Capitals definitely looked old, and ultimately the Detroit Red Wings were down. They were down 4-3. They were down 4-1 the day before, and they came back, tied it up with very little time left on the clock, won it in overtime, and then the next day they're down again 4-3. I'm watching the Flyers game, and I'm watching on the Score app. And I love the Score app. The Score app gives me all my stuff. And I'm watching it. I'm refreshing it, and it's like there's 30 seconds left, and then there's 20 seconds left, and it's the longest amount of time I've ever seen in my life in a hockey game go off the app. And I know the app's a little bit behind, but 5 seconds left in that game, Detroit winds up putting one past the goalie in Montreal, and in that moment in time, the Flyers season is over. However, the Flyers didn't know that at the time, obviously. They pulled the goalie. So, right as the Detroit goal goes in and ends the Flyers season, the Capitals get the puck and they score a goal in the empty net. And they wind up winning the game 2-1 in that regards. I felt like Torts pulled the goalie a little too early. There was like 3.5 minutes left. I didn't even realize because I was paying attention to the Detroit game. I didn't realize that he had pulled the goalie so early. They were getting a lot of pressure in the Capital zone. You could tell that the Capitals were a little bit slow just because they were tired from playing the night before. I didn't think that they needed to pull the goalie so right away, but they did. And ultimately, it was like a turnover right there, bang in the net. The Capitals rejoiced like they just won the Stanley Cup because they did get into the playoffs. I mean, you knew that they knew that had done it. The Flyers tried to work it back. They pulled the goalie again and really had most of the pressure in their offensive zone, but just um, it wasn't enough. They weren't able to get it past the goalie, and ultimately, Washington winds up clinching the number 8 seed or the second wild card and knocking out Detroit. Now, in the process of that, I mean, anybody who knows hockey and anybody who was paying attention, including Penguins fans, which I will say that Penguins fans understand. Penguins fans, as much as we can go back and forth, I don't like the Penguins. Penguins fans don't like the Flyers. I have a love-hate relationship with Pittsburgh. They love to hate me because I'm a Flyers fan. But I will say that Penguins fans and Pittsburgh fans are hockey people. They know hockey. And first off, I don't know how many text messages I got that they were like, "Oh my God, we got to root for the Flyers." It's like they were showing memes of me saying, "Here's every Penguins fan today." They're showing me all crazy. And I tell you, if everything had worked right for the Flyers, had Detroit lost, had the Flyers won, there was a chance that yesterday I was going to go up to the island where the Penguins are playing their last game, buy a ticket behind the Penguins bench and troll them all game long. Like I was planning on doing it because if like hey, listen, I didn't think that the Flyers were going to make the playoffs, but if everything worked that yesterday the Flyers were still in the playoff picture, I was going up there. I was going to, yep, forget charity. No, the charity is me spending the money up there to go to Long Island, take that 5-hour trip because it's impossible to get there to that stadium without sitting in 2 hours worth of traffic. And it takes 2 hours to get up that way. So it'd have been like 4 and 4.5 hours to just do that and then have to sit in traffic for 2 hours just to get out of the stadium area to get back and to spend another 2 hours. It would have been 8-hour round trip in the car. But I would have gone up there to do that and trolled the Penguins the entire time. I didn't need to do that, interestingly enough, because Washington had already done it. But Penguins fans, very interesting when they come to, I'm not going to say to my rescue, but to my defense, when they're like, yeah, Red Wings fans, because Red Wings fans were crying. Oh, we won this game, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I had to make a video. I never make a video where I am trolling another team. I don't do it. It's not how I operate. I want my team to win. My team needs to do what it needs to do. And that's how we win. I don't worry about what anybody else does. But I started to get a lot of heat from Red Wings fans crying about the fact that we pulled the goalie too early and that we lost against the Capitals. How do we pull the goalie when we're in a tie game? Blah 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 blah. Like they didn't know anything about what was going on. They didn't know that we still had an opportunity to win the playoffs, get in the playoffs. And the truth of the matter is we should have been in the playoffs already. We should have been in the playoffs 3 games ago. We should have clinched that last spot because ultimately, if we had won one game, even maybe 2 games against some of the worst teams in the league, Chicago, Montreal, uh, Columbus, those 3 games, we lost those 3 games. And I think all those teams scored 6 goals plus. You know what I mean? It was just, they worked their asses off for 70 games. And then in the last 12 games, 10 of those 12 games, they blew it. They blew it. And it was, that was a shame to kind of watch. It was not the way I would have ended the season. But, unfortunately, it is what it is. You know what I mean? I think that certain moves that the coach did, Tortorella, I am not a I like Tortorella. I think that he has done wonders with this team. He may even possibly be looked at as a possible coach of the year finalist because of where he brought this team this year. I mean, he was able to make something, a playoff run out of nothing. This team is not talented enough and definitely has to find somebody who knows how to get in front of the net. They got to get somebody who gets in front of the net. The Flyers, for some reason or another, just do not have anybody that goes to crash the net. And I don't know how many times, specifically in the game against the Capitals, how many times that there was like a pass up front, but there was nobody there. If somebody was there in front of the net and hit it home, we'd have scored 4 or 5 goals that game. But that we don't have that person, and they need to find that person as soon as possible. I so miss the days of Tim Kerr. And I was never a big Scott Hartnell fan, but even Scott Hartnell was one of those guys who would get there in front of the net and actually just slam it home. I wish Tippett would get a little bit more involved like that. I know he likes to stay on the wings and stay outside the dots, but I keep hoping that they maybe when Ristolainen comes back, if he does come back, that they wind up maybe putting him as a winger. And just because in the power play last year, they would put him in front of the goal. And he wasn't very good with the stick and being able to do the deflections, but he's a big guy, hard to move, hard to see around him. And they would get more power play goals. Not the way they just I think we had more shorthanded goals this year than power play goals. That when we get on the power play, I almost wanted the Flyers to commit a penalty because I thought we would be better 4-on-4. It was just interesting how they could not seem to score goals because you didn't have the presence in front of the net. You never had that person who was there, be able to put some deflections there and get in front of the goalie, be hard to move. And because of that, they just did not. They had the worst power play in the league. Best penalty kill, which is not something you see. You have one that's so great and one that's so bad. It's like they're both good, they're both bad. No, not the Flyers. Best penalty kill, most shorthanded goals, doing all that stuff because they like to go, they like to block. They like to block the puck. They will go down and they will sacrifice their bodies to be able to block the pucks. But they just were having They just could not seem to score goals, and that's because you don't have the guy who gets in front of the net who's hard to move, and because of that, uh, they just haven't been able to do that, and they need that guy. They need that guy who knows how to crash the net. I mean, even look at the goal, the first goal that the Capitals scored, Ovechkin, because he went towards the net, was able to get a deflection and score the goal. You know what I mean? And that's what he does. That's why he's so good. He gets in that Hartnell position. Where Hartnell on the power play, and that's the difference between Tippett and Hartnell. And like I says, I was never a big Hartnell fan. I mean, he did play some games pretty well. I know he's still part of the Flyers organization. I don't have anything problem with him personally. I just wasn't a big fan of the way he played the game sometimes. But I will say that he would go inside the dots and he would sometimes crash the net. And he was a bigger guy. So he would be able to get some of those deflections. He'd be able to sometimes screen the goaltender and they would get those goals. Now, obviously, he had Giroux also shooting the puck, and that helped a little bit too. Tippett is kind of like Giroux, but he's also kind of like Hartnell. But the problem that I have with Tippett is that he plays outside the dots. He needs to move inside a little bit, go inside the dots so that he has a lot more. He can get his stick on there a little bit more. He'd be able to possibly hit the puck and change the direction of the puck, make it a knuckleball or just, get it around the goalie or what have you. There's just so many different things that I feel that they could do differently. And ultimately, if Tippett was to do that, because he likes to play on the same side that TK plays, and I know that they float around, that it's not like that they're in any one spot all the time, but if you had TK on that wing right there, because TK is going to be a better shot outside past the dots because he's too small. He's got to be able to use the speed and everything to get around. But Tippett's got to go in. Tippett's a little bit bigger. He's still not big enough. He's a little bit easier to move, but he's got the stick ability. You can watch that guy, and he can go ahead and stick handle around some players all the time. So obviously, I know he's got the eyesight and the ability to be able to get those rebounds, and to be able to deflect the puck past the goalie. I don't know why they don't play that way. Like I'm a firm believer that they should play defense or the power play a little differently next year. They need to. They need to be better on the power play. I think that what ultimately it was something ridiculous, like 9%, 10%, maybe 11% on the power play. Are you kidding me? 5-on-4 and you got 11%. That's terrible. That's terrible. I know I'm making a joke where I feel like that they got more shorthanded goals than power play goals. I know that's not true, but it's too close. Way too close. I mean, we had the best shorthanded. I think we scored the most shorthanded goals in the NHL this year. We had I think a top five, shorthanded defense. Just terrible on the power play. So the special teams really need to fix themselves there. But that being all said, the Flyers were still only really 2 points away. I knew 90 points was going to be what you needed to get in the playoffs. You needed to get to 90 points. And the Flyers didn't do it. They got to 87 points. So I look forward to next year, as I said there. But I had to give some flack to those Detroit Red Wings fans that just were crying crying just as bad as Giants fans from a couple years ago when the Eagles pulled their starter and put in the backup, and the backup threw two interceptions right away, and Washington winds up winning the division at 7-9 instead of the 6-10 Giants that were crying, "Oh, you guys threw the game, blah 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 blah." When your coach was too worried about what other teams were doing instead of what his team was doing, and that team sucked, and that's why they didn't make it to the playoffs. Well, it was the same thing with Detroit. Detroit could have won plenty of games. They had their 8-game or 9-game losing streak in the middle of the. Hey, they were the second wild card. The Flyers were the third seed. So they didn't even mess with the wild card. They lost, Detroit lost all those games, then needed to come back, and then I think wound up only going uh, 3-6 and or yeah 3-6-2 or 2-6-2 in their last 10, and not including the last two, so maybe 4-6 in their last 10. Get out of here! You ain't going to win games like that. You ain't going to get in the playoffs like that, and it was their own fault. And I needed to let them know that 100%. So, that being said, playoff hockey is about to get started here in a couple days, and it's going to be an interesting. I'm a big fan. Um, I know on I guess it's Sunday, the Lightning play the Panthers, the Capitals play the Rangers. I think that the Rangers win that series handily. I know that there is the President's Cup curse, but I don't think that that's going to affect them. I think that the Rangers are playing too good of hockey right now, and Washington's just too old. You know, Ovechkin obviously it can figure it out. Wilson is a big guy. They do have a big team, and that big team can impose their will on a smaller team. And the Rangers aren't a small team, but they're definitely smaller than the Capitals. But they got a lot more speed. And I just think, and the other thing is that I don't know if they've got over under on goals for a series, but if whatever Zibanejad's got, as long as it's not something ridiculous like 9 goals over under, you're going to have Zibanejad go over. Bet the over on Zibanejad. Zibanejad owns the Capitals. Every time I watch them play, the Zibanejad is getting like 2 goals, 5 points in a game, 4 points in a game. He just seems to own the Capitals, and I got to imagine in the playoffs it's going to be a very big deal. Same thing. So yeah, I love playoff hockey, even though the Flyers aren't in it. I really wish the Flyers were going to get in it and play the Rangers. It would have been awesome that the Sixers would have been playing the Knicks and the Flyers would have been playing the Rangers. It would have been Philly versus New York. Would have been a great, great news. If anything, just the Turnpike series, or not the New Jersey Turnpike series, going back and forth up there from Madison Square Garden. I have never been to Madison Square Garden. I probably would have been there 4 or 5 times. Just rent a room up there and just stay there for the home games, for New York's home games, and just change my paint as needed. Go from Flyers to Sixers, Flyers to Sixers, but. Ultimately, it was not to be, and Washington's going to be the one. But I still love watching playoff hockey. Feel that there's nothing better, no better playoffs than playoff hockey. Overtime hockey games are more exciting than just about anything else in sports. You're like riveted to every pass, every shot on goal. It's there, and especially when you get into the second overtime, and in some cases third, fourth, fifth overtimes. I mean, I was watching the Flyers Penguins game, that fifth overtime, where it was just literally 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm staring at the screen like this, just watching every skate up ice. You're nervous, and the goalie's doing their things, and these guys are so exhausted. Uh, and then, of course, Primo scoring that goal, which, interestingly enough, for those that don't know that game, you could look it up. That was Primo's first shift in that period. He had to stay back because he had a problem with his skate. He needed to get a new skate on his skates. Obviously, he had to replace the skate part, and it had to get sharpened. So he was 7 minutes late to that period, and maybe that extra bit of rest, which was probably equates to like 12 to 15 minutes, wound up being enough rest, and he had a little bit extra energy and winds up putting the puck in the net in the fifth overtime of I think it was game 5 or game 4 of that series, and I think that was the last series with Mario Lemieux, because they won that game 5, but the Flyers won game 6, and ultimately, yeah, it was the blade. He had to resharpen the blade, so it took extra time. He was stuck back in the locker room because they had to replace the entire blade of the skate. Um, And like I said, he came out 7 minutes late. 7 minutes into the period was his first shift of that period, and he winds up scoring the goal in that and ending that game after 5 overtimes, which was I remember that like it was yesterday. And then, like I said, the next game, the Penguins won, and I believe that was the last win of Mario Lemieux's career. I think he retired after the Flyers won Game 6 of that series. So, yeah, like I said, when it comes to hockey, I remember lots of different stuff. I remember watching the the offsides call that never happened, and the Islanders scoring that goal. Leon Stickle screwing the Flyers and the Islanders. Back when hockey, it didn't matter. You were it was the best 16 teams making it in the playoffs. They had best of 5 series and then best of 7 series. It wasn't like 7-7-7-7, and it was just everybody. So the Flyers and the Islanders were in the same division, and they played for the Stanley Cup. So now it's a whole different. It's East versus West. It's all differently done. But back then, the Islanders could play the Flyers in the Stanley Cup, and that bad call, Leon Stickle, just not calling the offsides, and everybody kind of slowed up a little bit. You can't slow up. Got to play to the whistle, and ultimately the Islanders scored that goal, wound up winning that game, and wind up winning another 3 cups after that. That was the first of their 4 cups. Billy Smith was their goalie. I remember that, and he was a feisty one, we'll say. He liked to fight a little bit. We had Bob Froese and Pete Peters. Those guys were in net back then. That was like the last line of defense, where we had, I think, Bobby Clark was still there. Mel Bridgman was on that team. You still had like Mark Howe and things like that. That was a pretty good team. But there was like Reggie Leach was still on there. Bill Barber was still on that team. Yeah, I mean there was it's trying to remember all the guys that were on that team. I could name probably a good portion of them, but they just weren't able to get it done. So, anyways, I saw that the Stars have the number 1 seed out west. I, it'll be interesting to see how the Stars to go up against Vegas. I got Vegas winning it. I think the Vegas beats the Stars. I think that now, and everybody knows what Vegas did. Everybody knows it. If you are a hockey fan, you know the story now. Yeah, listen, have your guys act hurt. Take them off of your payroll, bring in all the guys so that you can get under the cap. And when the playoffs start, everybody's miraculously healthy. That is a page out of the Lightning playbook to win how they won their cups. And now it's what the Golden Knights are doing, and I think that they have the upper hand here. I would not bet money as a Dallas Stars fan. That's going to be a tough series. I think that they could make it go 7 games, but I just think the Golden Knights have got too much firepower for the Stars, and it's a shame that it's a matchup like that. I think the Stars would have been better off getting the number 2, give Vancouver the number 1 seed, because ultimately, let's face it, Vancouver knows how to choke. They are chokers in the playoffs. It's like Toronto. Toronto's got a great regular season. They're going to make the playoffs, blah, 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 blah. And what happens? Every year, Toronto's big on pooping beds. They're big on pooping beds. So, and obviously, let's go to that real fast. Let's see who Toronto is going to be playing the Bruins. And as figured, the Bruins went 4-0 versus Toronto this year. They did play early last month. I think in a back-to-back, it was a home and home series, and 4-1, 4-1, which is what I think this series will end at, 4-1. And I am not a Boston fan, but just Toronto cannot seem to do anything right. And unfortunately, I feel the same way about Vancouver. Vancouver is just as bad, but The Stars going up against the Kings. Stars won all 3 of those games. See, I didn't realize that that had changed. How about that? Wow. So the Golden Knights wound up getting themselves. See, this is why I didn't pay enough attention to the West. They wound up getting the 3rd seed in their division, so they're not even in the wild card spot. I got Nashville going up against Vancouver. I think Vancouver can beat Nashville. I think Nashville's got a good team, but not a great team there. Um, the Golden Knights against Edmonton Oilers. Uh, bye, Connor. Sorry, Connor. You just ain't got it. You just ain't got enough. The Golden Knights are going to rip through you guys. But I do see that Dallas. I think Dallas will beat the Kings without a problem. That's no doubt in my mind there. So there you go. See, that shows me a little bit. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And you know what? I don't want Jake Ottinger. I'm actually not a fan of either one of those players. I mean, they're just old guys, and that's not what I want. I want somebody who's going to be here for a little while. I want somebody who I don't have, not 2 seasons. I want somebody here who's going to grow with this team. And Jake Ottinger is not going to be that guy. Wyatt Johnson not going to be that guy. You're not going to give him to us. Give that to Arizona, people that need to take cap space because they don't. They're always playing at the cap minimum. So I ain't worried about any of that at all. So other matchups in hockey. I'll go through it really quickly. The Panthers and the Lightning. The Panthers won. They beat the Lightning 2 out of 3 games. This is the Florida series. Uh, the Lightning is always a tough out. They are always a tough out when it gets to the Stanley Cup playoffs. They have won the cups recently. They know what it takes to get up there. Florida is going to go as far as their goalie takes them, Bobrovsky, and I just it's going to be tough. That's going to be a really tough series, interesting series to watch there. I like that. I kind of put the edge to the Lightning right now, just to the Lightning on that side. The Bruins versus the Maple Leafs. That's Bruins, straight Bruins all the time. Um, yeah, that's the Bruins winning that game, that series. I think it goes maybe 5, 6 games, and Toronto people are crying again that oh, we had such a good season and nope, out of the playoffs. Rangers versus Washington. I got the Rangers all over Washington here. Washington's too old. They're just too old. I see now that would be something I would love to see. I know that they won't get rid of him, and when he finally does retire, he will retire. He'd retire as a Washington Capital. He'll go into Hall of Fame as a Washington Capital. But I really wish they would trade Ovechkin to a team. And if I was the Flyers, I'd love to pick him up. If we had Ovechkin on this team, on the Flyers team as constructed right now, we'd be a Stanley Cup contender. I think that would be enough. He would be enough. He just knows how to play the right way. He knows how to get there in front of the net. He scored 31 goals this year. He'd have been close to 60 goals this year had he played on the Flyers. No doubt in my mind. They'll never trade him. They'll never get rid of him. And that's a shame, but ultimately, I mean, he came in as a Capital and as a Capital, and God bless him. Like I says, out of all the superstars in the league, I'm an Ovechkin fan. I just like the way he plays. The Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Islanders. I know that the New York Islanders kind of snuck in here and wound up. They were sellers at the trade deadline and wound up getting in the playoffs. That was because nobody else wanted to be in. I really feel that way. Flyers blew it. Red Wings blew it. Pittsburgh blew it. Washington kind of blew it. Really, they got in by the skin of their ass. So I kind of feel that the Islanders were the best of a bad bunch and got in there as the number 3 seed. They got a tough pull against the Hurricanes, and I think I have the Hurricanes actually going to lead They're going to be the ones who represent the East in the Stanley Cup. Um, I'm such a fan of their coach, Rod Brindamore, and that guy is just a monster. He's a beast. If he was out there, he'd be the best hockey player on this team right now. He'd be the best hockey player on this team, on that team. He's just a monster. You look at he's so ripped. He can get out there and he can still skate circles around those guys like it's nothing. And so I'm a big fan of that coach. Expect that will happen. In the West, as I said, the Stars are going to kill the Kings. The Kings snuck in there, but I don't, you know, they have a little bit of star power, but not enough. Not enough to be able to go up against the Stars. I don't see that occurring. The Winnipeg Jets against the Colorado Avalanche. Winnipeg won this series 3-0. But Winnipeg is kind of like they're another team that just pooped the bed. They pooped the bed. And I don't know why. Like they have a pretty decent team, but they just seem to fall apart. I call that's a straight. They got the pucker. They pucker it up. And I think that's going to be a challenging series. I would not be surprised. I'm going to edge slightly Colorado in that series. It could go either way, but I'm going to edge slightly on Colorado's side, even though they've had a hard time even competing. These games weren't even close. It looks like 4-2, 6-2, and 7-0. Winnipeg wins all three. So first game of the season that they played was close, but then it was like, yeah, Winnipeg smack. So that being said, look for Colorado to win these games. I got them maybe winning in 6 or 7 games. Nashville versus Vancouver. Vancouver won this series 3-0 as well. Vancouver's got a lot of talent on this team, and Nashville's just not going to be able to keep up with them. Nashville's got a decent team. They can play against a lot of these. I expect that these games will be close. I mean, the games that they played were 3-2, 5-2, 5-2. I think that they're going to be 1-goal games here. You're going to see 1-goal games and a lot of overtime games in this series because Vancouver also is one that likes to play the drama card. It's going to be tough. But I got Vancouver winning that series. This is an interesting one. The Vegas Knights versus Edmonton. And game one of this, so Edmonton won this series 2-1. First game was 5-4. Second one was 3-1 Vegas. Third game was 5-1 Edmonton. Not the same team that they're going to be facing against in this playoffs. And Edmonton's going to go as far as Connor McDavid will take them, but I just don't think they have the goaltending to really stand behind it. I don't know I just don't see the goaltender being strong enough to be able to take Edmonton past. And until they get that resolved, they're just not going to have enough. They're just not going to have enough. And Vegas won it last year, and listen, when you won the cup last year, you want to get your name on there a second time. That's just the way it works. And that's, when you've figured out how to get over that mountain, when you've won those 16 games, you're going to do it again. And Edmonton hasn't figured it out yet. And they have had hard times in the playoffs. And as good as Connor McDavid is, he got 100 assists this year. I think he leads in points. I can't imagine that he's not going to be real close to winning the MVP this year. If not, the guy from the Lightning also has a really good chance of winning it. I think if he scores tonight, or the guy from Toronto who could score 70 goals, but that's not going to be enough for Toronto either. He's going to win the MVP. He ain't going to win the cup. Sorry, Connor. I think you're going to be done. So, and that's the NHL playoffs. What I think is going to happen really is a shame that the Flyers aren't in it. When Philadelphia is in the playoffs, and I'll say the same thing about Chicago. when the Blackhawks and the Flyers are in the playoffs, I obviously you want the original six, and the fact that Montreal has been pooping the bed, like that they just can't seem to get in. And you have Boston, you have Toronto, both of those teams are in. Montreal is going through this rebuild that's ridiculous. It's just they can't seem to get they've got some good young players. I'm a huge Suzuki fan. Um the guy's got tons of speed, he's got tons of talent and nothing around him at all. And it's going to take time for Montreal to figure it all out and get their stuff in order so that they could be back again. But not that I'm crying about it, because every time Montreal loses, I'm happy about it. That being said, the original six, Detroit not being in it, Chicago not being in it, and I know that the Flyers were not part of the original six, but they were part of the original expansion teams. Uh, I feel that when Philadelphia's in it, Pittsburgh's in it, Chicago's in it, the playoffs, the NHL playoffs are a lot more exciting. They just are. And it's so funny because they're all Eastern Conference teams, and you have like the Carolina Hurricanes who you I don't relate hockey with Carolina. I just don't. That doesn't not taking anything away from that team. It's just that it's better to watch hockey in Philly and in Pittsburgh. That's where hockey is really where you want to watch it. That's what's going to happen. And that the fact that the Flyers aren't in it, that's a bummer to me. Obviously, I know why they're not in it. It was frustrating when it was happening because you can't do anything about it. I can't go on the ice and skate. In fact, they don't want me out there on the ice to skate because I can't skate worth a lick. And Pittsburgh not being in it. Uh, Again, I appreciated the Pittsburgh fans who memed me. Like I said, we have this love-hate relationship. They love to hate me, and I love to hate them. You know what I mean? It's rare. I say that I hate Sidney Crosby, and when I use that word hate, I don't say I hate a lot of people, but when I use that word hate, that's a level of respect. You know, I hate Sidney Crosby. I never want ever like if Sidney Crosby could come to the Flyers, I don't want him. I don't want him. I always want to hate Sidney Crosby. It's fun. I love hating him. I love hating him. I want to hate him, and he's a tremendous player. He's a Hall of Fame player. And it's even when he was doing it for Canada and he scored that goal, like even he was like Mike Richards was on the line with him, and it was like Mike Richards could have scored that goal for Team Canada, would have been so much better. Nope. The fact that it was Crosby made me angry. And I'm talking 12 years ago. This is 12 years ago now. I still think about that type of stuff. Um, and he fits into a very elite category. Sidney Crosby. On guys that I hate, there are a few guys that I hate, and they all really stem from hockey. It's interesting how that works. Guys that I hated from the NHL, like all time guys that I hate. Claude Lemieux. That guy I absolutely hated. Hate, 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 still hate. Still makes me seethe. All that guy could do was win cups. That's why it just and he was such a piece of shit. He was such a piece of shit. But he was such a good player. I hated him. I hated him. I hated him. I loved it when he got his ass kicked. I love it when Ed Hospodar beat the hell out of him. That was one of my favorite times out there when Chico Resch is going out there on the ice because they wanted to score the goal in the Flyers end, and that after everybody's off the ice, they're going on the ice, and then all the people coming onto the ice afterwards. No jerseys on. This is just warm ups, and they're having a big bench clearing brawl. But he was one of them. Matthew Barnaby. Matthew Barnaby was another one I just could not. He was a much better Travis Konechny. Now, Matthew Barnaby he didn't have all the talent that TK's got. TK's got much better talent, but he could just get under your skin in such a way, like he would just he was a hate to face. He was a hate to face. He was an ugly bitch, and still and just he would just frustrate you on the ice. You could tell he was getting under the skin of the players because he just knew how to do it. He was just one of those assholes that he could just get up under your skin. And it was like, sticking needles up under your skin and then moving it around. Like he just knew how to get up under you. And he would change the game like that. Like that was one of those guys that just knew how to do it. Scott Stevens, another guy that I thought Scott Stevens was dirty. He was a dirty player. Good player, great defenseman, won his share of cups, was doing what he was told to do. So I can't argue with that. I hated him. He was just one of those guys. Obviously, he did the hit that laid out Eric Lindros, and ultimately it didn't end his career, but it kind of did. It kind of ended his career, and it changed that series around. That being said, he would go and he'd hen hunt. He would have been kicked out of the league for that hit that he gave to Eric Lindros. That one, but everything's changed since then now. So ultimately, it was just he was a guy that I hate, absolutely just could not stand, hated all the time. Like man, just yeah. And those are just a few. I mean, there were a couple of others that I could put in there, but you could tell like all those guys were great players. Matthew Barnaby withstanding, but he was just, like I said, he was one of those. And the one guy who kind of reminds me of Matthew Barnaby, he's also a hate the face. He's a hate the face, and I just can't stand it. Marchand, great player too. Great player. Hate him. Hate him. I don't ever want him on my team. I love it when he gets checked to the boards. I love it when people beat his ass. I want him to smash his nose because his nose is in a different area code than his face. Great player. Can't argue with the way he plays the game. He's just a great player, and that's why I love to hate him. You know what I mean? I love to hate him. I love it when he screws up. I love it, all that stuff. Don't ever want him on my team because I always want to hate him. Can't argue with how good he plays the game. And there's just like that. There's some people like that in hockey. So once we come back, we will talk a little bit about the basketball playoffs. I'll give you my what I think is going to happen in the playoff series moving forward. And then we'll talk about Major League Baseball and your friend and mine, Angel Hernandez, where, he is the protected one, as I'm going to put it. And we'll go a little bit in depth about that right after these commercial messages. So please stay tuned. I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, from Brooklyn.
Hey, guys, any?
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Sometimes, all you need to change your life is a sign. A sign that says, "Hank, this is the place you've been looking for." And sometimes that sign is an actual sign that's mounted to a building. 1 second, I'm looking at a sign. I know what you're thinking, and no, I don't love B-dubs just because I'm a buffalo with wings. Frankly, that's offensive and reductionist. Cause this place, come on. It's like they took beer and made it into a place and then gave that place sports and chicken wings. And the people, Cuba, the best.
Oh! What the is going on, Marty? This isn't a game. This is trivia.
Yeah, this place is kind of like heaven. You know, without needing to get hit by a bus. Let's go, sports bar.
My baloney has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name. It's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And we are back for the second hour of Coast to Coast, where I'm doing it all by myself today. I was surprised I had an hour to talk about so far, and I've got a whole nother hour to bring to you guys. So, yes, you get the full double deuce hours with me, the Philly sports guy. And this time we're going to go talk about the NBA playoffs. Obviously, they are starting as of Friday is the last play-in games where we're going to get the last little bit where we find whether the Heat or the Bulls are going to wind up going up against Boston, and the Kings or the Pelicans are going to wind up going up against OKC. And honestly, I feel that it's going to be, let's face it, I just think that OKC is going to wind up playing the Kings. I just don't think that the Pelicans without Zion being out is going to be, just not enough there. When it comes to, I think the Heat are going to play against the Celtics, and I hope Jimmy Butler, his knee is not as bad as that there's not a lot of swelling and that he's able to play at 100% because I think that would be a great series. I like to see Boston get beat up a little bit because ultimately they would wind up going up against, the Cavaliers or the Magic. Either one of those teams right now. I got the Cavaliers beating the Magic in that series. Here, I might as well let's just start it off. So obviously the Celtics are going to wind up playing one of those two teams, either the Bulls or the Heat. I think that the Celtics will smash the Bulls. I just don't think the Bulls have enough. I think that the Heat can give them a really good series. Obviously, the Heat wound up going to the finals last year. That means they beat them, and ultimately that's going to be in Boston's head a little bit. I got to imagine that they're going to be like, ooh, let's try to take care of this. And that may start the squeeze, the pucker happen. So I would be interested to see that, because if Miami beats Boston, then there is no chance. There's no chance that that will even be a thing. Like I said, the Sixers will wind up going and winning the East, no doubt in my mind. Here we go. The Knicks are going up against the Sixers. This is going to be a really tough series. Like I said, I've said it a couple of times already. I thought that out of all the teams in the East, besides Boston, I thought that the Knicks matched up well with the Sixers. I would not Batum is going to have to play some of like he did, uh, this last game, or else it's going to be really tough. I know that the Knicks won the season series and stuff like that, but they have not played this team the way that they are constructed, and it's going to be a tough series all the way around. Uh, and like I said, as Bo likes to say, the Knicks are the Knicks, and the Knicks will nick it up. And that could be very possible here, that the Sixers wind up winning this series, maybe in 5 or 6, but you know, it could. I wouldn't be surprised for it to go 7-game series. The Bucks and the Pacers, uh, very interesting series. Let's see. So Pacers won game one, the Bucks won game two, the Pacers won game three, Pacers won game four, Pacers won game five, 4 out of 5 games. Now, the Bucks have more talent. However, Giannis is not going to play in game one. So that's going to definitely favor Indianapolis. Um, if Indiana doesn't win game one, they ain't winning the series. They have to win game one without Giannis playing. Other than that, this series doesn't even move my needle some. I want the Bucks to win this series so that the Sixers can play the Bucks and knock the Bucks out. But whether the Sixers play the Bucks, whether the Sixers play the Pacers, the Sixers are going to win that series. So no doubt in my mind about this. You're going to see the Sixers in the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in a long time because they can't seem to ever get out of the second round. This year they get out of the second round. So as long as they get past New York, they got to get past New York first. And then uh, Cleveland versus Orlando. When I look at this, Orlando won game one, Cleveland won game two, Orlando won game three, Cleveland won game four. Uh, this goes back and forth to me. You know what I mean? It's interesting. You know, I'll be honest. Whoever wins the Celtics Heat series wins that series too. I that Cleveland has gone in there and has limped into the playoffs. Orlando's played a little better, but ultimately I don't think has enough star power. Like this is a good series for them to start off with, and I think I give an edge to Orlando here rather than Cleveland just because of the way Cleveland limped into the playoffs. So I got Orlando maybe in 6 games here, but uh, either way, I think that whoever wins this series, it doesn't make it out of the second round to either the Heat or the Celtics, specifically the Celtics. But I think the Heat could beat either one of these teams as well. The opposite side of the bracket, we have the Lakers versus the Nuggets. Nuggets, I mean, first off, they don't have an answer for the Joker, and until it doesn't matter. I think that they win that easily. Then you have the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Phoenix Suns. Interesting matchup here. Phoenix, 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 all 3 times against Minnesota. Minnesota was the number 3 team here, so they do have home field. Do you bet against KD in the playoffs? Do you do that? Nope. I ain't doing it. I'm not doing it with Booker and KD. I don't think you can bet against them. Are either one of them hurt? I mean, I don't know that. I'd have to let me see if either one of those guys are hurt in the series just to make sure. No, nobody's hurt. Yeah. So that being said, I think that the Suns win that series in 6, and then I have. Well, like I said, we're going to find out who's going to play OKC right now. That last game is the Clippers and the Mavericks, Dallas Mavericks. This is going to be a good series to watch. I wouldn't be surprised this one goes 7 games. Dallas won the first one. The Clippers won the next 2 after that. Uh, these teams haven't played each other since right before Christmas. And again, it's one of those situations like, oh, right, is anybody hurt on this? Uh, Kawhi Leonard has won a chip. He carried a team, carried a Toronto team to the championship. Not what 4 or 5 years ago. So I mean, obviously, he's one of the better players in the league when he wants to play. Uh, Dallas is Dallas has got some good players too. So it's going to be a very interesting series. I'm going to say I'm going to take the Clippers in 7 in this one, in that series, saying that the Clippers playing at home is going to give them that advantage over Dallas. But no chance, still, uh, that tough game against Dallas there. And the Thunder are just going to beat. There's no chance. I don't think that the Kings or the Pelicans can compete against the Thunder. That's just the Thunder wins that series, and then you're going to wind up going up against either Dallas or the Clippers, and that's going to be a fun series to watch too. I think that whoever is in that number 5 spot, could possibly, you know, wind up going to the Eastern Conference Finals against Denver. Because when you think about the Suns going up against the Nuggets, I edge to Denver. I think that Denver beats KD again. And, I think that until Denver's out, they're the team to beat in the West. And I don't care that they're only the number 2 seed. I don't care if all chalk wins and the Thunder wind up having home court advantage against the Nuggets. I think that the Nuggets win that, and wouldn't surprise me to see a Sixers Nuggets final. And then I love our chances against that. I love our chances because every time Joel Embiid goes up against the Joker looks small. He just comes up small. I mean, they both have good games. Let's. I'm going to call that spade a spade. They both have good games, but Sixers seem to win those games, and I love our chances if we go up against Denver. So there we have the NBA. My take on the NBA playoffs as of right this second. Yes, that NBA player that got banned for gambling, he got banned for gambling because he was gambling on his team and himself. Um, he got a lifetime ban. See, this is why basketball is ridiculous to me. Uh, First off, who is he? Who is the guy? I mean, he's like a tier 2 player. He's a tier 2 player. I'm not even in, so it was no big deal. I know that the reason why he's a tier 2 player is because of, you know, that's why he's getting this lifetime ban. It'll get tossed out. The problem is that, you know, gambling rules the world. You can't have gambling be the biggest sponsor of your league, and then we're gonna have lifetime bans for gambling. Get out of here. You've made it part of the fabric. You've made it part of the fabric of sports. So now you guys have to make the bed that you've lied. You got to lie in the bed that you made. So, and that's kind of what I feel about this. Again, Adam Silver is another goofball, who doesn't know how to run his league. It's already the inmates running the asylum over there, and this just was another move that shows we don't know what we're doing, and that's how I felt about that. So, this story was interesting to me. That Jason Kelsey, that they're playing this game in Cincinnati, and they're like, okay, we're going to put the one Super Bowl ring in a sock and put it in a couple of things of chili, and we're going to, the one who finds the real ring gets to keep it. Truth of the matter is that I think somebody stole that ring. I don't think it's in a landfill. I think somebody's got it. That's what I would have done. If I had the opportunity to get it, I'd have been like, oh, I couldn't find any socks. I'd have those socks in my pocket and be like, oh, I didn't find any. Sorry, guys. And then walking off with that ring and then keeping it. You have lure. That'd be like lure later on. Be like, that ring could change hands hundreds of times there. That's what, like, I would, that sounds like a great story to have. First off, It was absolutely ridiculous to even have that. Listen, you put a couple of rocks in a sock and one fake ring. You don't use your Super Bowl ring and put in a whole bunch of fake Super Bowl rings. When you pull them all out and they're all full of chili, you don't know if that's the real one or the fake one. So ridiculous. Hey, listen, I mean, I love Jason Kelsey. I love the fact that he is one of the better podcasters out there, and that him and Travis specifically have, put themselves and their family on the map the way that they have. God bless them both. This was a ridiculously stupid, you know, thing to do. I just like really, really. I mean, obviously, you don't hold that sacred. Like that ring should mean something. Having that trophy should mean something. The fact that you just played a game with it is ridiculous. I mean, I feel like and the ring isn't the achievement. So let's be for real. It's just a ring. But ultimately, it's like that was such an idiotic move. Such an idiotic move. And I feel like what it did, it's create buzz. You got buzz. You got us talking about it on here. We're talking about your podcast again. That's what we're doing. I wouldn't be surprised if the ring is in his sock drawer. Wouldn't be surprised about that. He's talking about, yeah, I guess I'll just have to buy another one. I understand that you got more money than God and that you could buy another ring. That's awesome. But it's not a matter of that. It's a matter of, you know, that's supposed to be sacred. That's supposed to have meant something. You were part of the team, the very first Philadelphia Eagles franchise team to win a Super Bowl. And you can get a trophy. I mean, I understand you get a trophy, but the ring signifies that achievement. And to play games with the ring it kind of rubs me a little bit the wrong way. It does kind of rub me a little bit the wrong way. And obviously it's his ring. He can do whatever he wants with it. I'm just not sure how much of a media ploy this wound up being, and that's what kind of bothers me a little bit, just a little bit. I don't ever tell anybody how they should live their lives. I'm not going to say to somebody like, hey, you know are you that much are you that daft, are you that much of an idiot that you used your ring, you used your actual ring, you could have used a fake ring, an expensive fake ring, $5,000 ring. You could have spent that $5,000. It's not like you guys ain't got the money. 5 grand. And then like I said, put other rings in there that don't mean anything. You know what I mean? Just like, yeah, we got this high school ring from 1998 of a high school that 30 people went to. You know what I mean? Who cares? That's why I'm not a big fan of this. Like, you could have actually, what you could have done, because it was done at Cincinnati University or whatever it was in Cincinnati, they did it to a stadium full of people. You could have did Bearcat class rings. That's what I would have done. One Super Bowl ring, one very nice, you know, fake Super Bowl ring, very expensive Super Bowl ring. It's a custom copy that's worth 5 grand. Get that Super Bowl ring. And if you find it, you win it. If you find the other rings, you get to keep it. Ah, you got a Cincinnati ring. You got a class ring from Cincinnati. Nice class ring. Cost $250. Exactly. No sense. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. Like I said, this is all just drama. It's drama and keeps the show relevant. So I'm not a fan of that. Obviously, like I said, he's not worried about it. It's not that wasn't his achievement. The ring isn't the achievement. Him doing it is the achievement. But that is so, and it actually angers me. It actually angers me that's how you treated it. And and I know that's not how he feels about the actual achievement itself. That he's endeared himself tremendously to Philadelphia. and he's a Philadelphia guy from here on out. He's originally from there, Cincinnati, and from Cleveland Heights. He owns Ohio and he owns Eastern Pennsylvania by being this Eagles guy, and he really doesn't matter where he goes, any NFL city, he's going to wind up being able to get a beer bought for him. He will never have to buy a beer anywhere in Philadelphia, anywhere in Ohio, and probably anywhere in the country, ever. Not that he can't buy his own, because I'm sure he can definitely buy his own. But this just did me the wrong way. I just didn't feel I didn't really care for that as much. So yeah. Moving on to I'm gonna go right to this and go to the standings here because I want to make sure what happened yesterday. We'll go to the scores first. See what happened yesterday. That's where they at? Where they at? Where they at? Oh, look at this! Twice, Seattle with a one hitter. Have moved to 9-10. 9-10. Third, they moved up a place. That pizza is not bought yet. He's still kind of in the running here. Still two games back on the Phillies, who won their game. They did everything they can to try to lose it too. It was 7-1 at one point and winds up being 7-6. But just Colorado didn't have enough. The bullpen almost gave it away. But I'm a firm believer that when the Phillies score more than 5 runs, they're going to win those games, and they did. They won that. They complete the sweep against the Rockies and wind up. I think what is it? They've won, I think, 7 of their last 9 games. Or 8 of their last 10 games in general, and are 11-8 for the season. So we're 9-10, 2.5 games out from your pizza, but I'm still expecting my pizza when I come to Seattle because you guys will be out of it by then. And we may even do double or nothing for the 3-game series because ultimately I think we're going to win that too. May not sweep you, but we're going to win the series. Schwarber with a couple of home runs yesterday. But Colorado gets 5 runs in the 8th inning. Almost blows it. But they were able to come out with the win and now go up against another great team. No, I'm just kidding about that. The Chicago White Sox that have won a whole 3 games this year. They're 3-15. I think they're already mathematically eliminated from the playoff contention already. 1/10 of the season in, they're out. So they did play some real teams already. I know that they swept the team that they're supposed to sweep. So, yes, they did. I know that we also beat the Reds. So, you guys are beating the Reds. So, good for you, Robert. Good for you. But, like I said, get ready to buy that pizza. Gold Flakes. Gold Flakes on the pizza. That being said, we're going to talk a little bit of time about Angel Hernandez. So Angel Hernandez is obviously he has been. I'm going to do a little bit of research on Angel Hernandez right here with you. I'm going to read it off to you so that you get a full idea. This guy is 62 years old, and yeah, I mean everybody's been up on this guy. He has how long? He's been 12 years. I mean, Sports Illustrated has given it to him. He's been. I want to see. Let me get him up here on his Wikipedia or. I mean, everything you can find there. He's got a base salary of four. He makes $400,000 a year. There it is. Here's his Wikipedia. He has been. Um, he worked in the National League. He's been an umpire since 1991. So 91 to 99 for the National League, and then Major League Baseball and from 2000 on. He has not umpired a World Series since 2002 and 2005. Those were the two times he actually was in a World Series. He'll never go back to another World Series again because of how bad he's been. He has been terrible over the last, and like I said, he makes $400,000 a year. Uh, here's some of the highlights, his career highlights. Let's go with this. This is interesting. Um, he umpired the All-Star game most recently in 2017. He's done 3 All-Star games. Division series, he's been in division series because every umpire has got to get an opportunity to umpire in the playoffs. They have to. It's part of what they do. They all get playoff, like the early series and stuff like that. Uh, the most recent championship series he did was in 2016. So after divisional series, he doesn't go any further. And the last divisional series he did was 2021. That was the last playoff series he did. He was twice in the World Series, 2002 and 2005. And he also did the World Baseball Classic in 2023. So there it was. He worked Game 7 of the 2008 ALCS for Darryl as a fill-in. And Hernandez was moved from the umpiring crew of Joe West to the crew of Jerry Davis because they couldn't have Joe West and Angel Hernandez on the same crew because that crew would have been the absolute worst crew to possibly ever be it. So it is literally he's been doing this since 91. He's been in Major League Baseball since 91. So 33 years. 33 years he has been umpiring. There you go. You did win your first. Here, look at that. You did win your first series of the season. And that's because the Reds don't like to travel anywhere. But, anyways, hey, listen, congratulations on that. But Angel Hernandez, I'll be honest. I feel like now he's doing it purposely. He knows he's protected. The union cannot do anything about it. They are crushing him across all social media platforms. Like it's been it. Let's see who is the Sports Illustrated killing him. New York Post killing him. Fan-sided, few different things killing him. Like he's just everybody. I mean, they showed him on the Pat McAfee show and how bad those 3 calls were, one after another after another. They can't get rid of him. They can't fire him. They're stuck with him. He is going to be a part of Major League Baseball umpire crew. But he won't play. He won't do another playoff game ever. And I got to imagine they're going to start to lean on him to have him retire. It's like, hey, listen, you've already been in it. He's been in this for 34 years. 34 years he has been an umpire. And he has been getting worse and worse and worse. So I got to imagine that it's only a matter of time before he's pushed to retire. The fact that he has sued the union to have him do an all-star or playoff game and he lost is even more so. Like we can't fire you. So now he's like, oh, well, you're not going to do. Well, then I'm just going to suck. I'm going to cost games. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cost games, and that's what he's doing. He's costing games for these teams. We saw Schwarber do the Angel Hernandez dance. Yeah, you call it bad here. You call it bad here. You call it bad here. You there. You just don't know anything. You suck. You straight out suck, Angel Hernandez. And as my buddy, the Philly captain did, as he was driving away from there and driving out of there, he goes, Angel Hernandez, you stink and I don't like you. And Angel Hernandez has got that shit-eating grin on his face as he's driving away. And it's true. It's true. Nobody likes him. Nobody wants him around. It's even there are rumors that nobody wants to even work with him in baseball, that the other umpires are having issues and problems with him. And what's going to wind up occurring is that he's going to be the one that's going to force the institution of them adding the mechanical balls and strikes. That they're going to say, yep, yeah, forget it. We're not going to have the umpires called anymore. It's always going to be mechanical. I don't think that'll absolutely occur, but he's the one that's going to cause all of that to happen because he sucks at his job, and it's a shame. It's a shame. Like, it was interesting to me how the Texas Ranger guy who had literally, I think 5 pitches got thrown. They were all in the same area. 2 were a little low. He called those balls, but literally it was a 2-2 count. And it was like 1 strike, that was a ball. 2 strikes, that was a ball. 3rd strike was a ball. And you just saw him. He looked. He just turned around, shook his head, didn't say a word. Because the moment you say, he's going to throw you out because right now umpires are soft. Right now they're like, oh, you're out. Oh, you said boo, you're out. And most umpires don't even know who's saying boo. They're just crying. Oh, you're out. You're out. You're out. Get out of here. They just, you know, this isn't Bush League. You guys are getting paid tons of money to call a game properly. He's getting paid $400,000 a year. $400,000 a year. Yeah. I something should be done. You should start finding them. You find these players when they do something wrong. This is their livelihood. If they are going to egregiously miss calls, egregiously, and that's what those 3 pitches were. They were egregious, blatant, bad calls. Then you are going to you should get fined. You should get fined. Hold them accountable. Like, this is, hey, listen, you made this many bad calls. You have a certain percentage. Listen, not every umpire is going to get every call right. I get it. I like the fact that you can now, that they go back to the replays. They see exactly what's going on to make sure that the calls are correct. Like, oh, yep. Yeah, and I tell you, there's a lot of times where you have baseball being held up a little bit while they're looking at the replay and they're saying go long because ultimately the umpire gets the call right. It's not taking all that time. But when it comes to him and he is so wrong so often, it's going to create a bigger problem. And like I said, they're going to go mechanical all across the board. And then you won't need him. Then you won't need him. And then all the umpires will really start to push for his retirement. Get him out of baseball because he took away jobs. That's what he's doing. He's taking away jobs. So I can't wait for him to go. I can't stand when he's part of this. It was like Joe West. Joe West was another one. Different, not as bad. Joe West was not as bad, but everybody was there to see Joe West, according to Joe West. Nobody was there to see the baseball game. Everybody just wanted to see the umpire. And Joe West had to do what Joe West did. And that was the problem with Joe. I didn't like Joe for that reason because it was all about him. It was never about the 2 teams playing. And then I think of the one guy. I mean, unfortunately, he had passed. He had died of a heart attack, but he was that one really, really big umpire, black guy. He was funny as hell. He wasn't that great. Yeah, exactly. Joe West was consistent. He was consistent. And the one thing I will say about Joe West is that one of the things Joe West did was when he figured out what his strike zone was. The strike zone remained the same. So if he was calling that ball in the outside corner, he was consistently calling it on the outside corner. So even though it may not have been a strike, it wasn't a strike the entire game. So you understood it. Everybody else understood it. The problem I had with him is that he was always, like umpires aren't supposed to try to pick fights. And he would try to pick fights. Umpires, shut your mouth. You ain't a part of this game. You call your balls, call your strike. You call the first strike, you call the second strike a little bit louder. Third strike, you do the dance. You know what I mean? That's how that works. You know what I mean? That's what you get to do when you're behind the plate. You just go like this or like this, every other way. You know what I mean? That's it. This or like this. When you're behind the plate, you get to do a little. And Joe West loved doing his dance. Yeah, that was one of his big deals. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? Like he would just try to do it, whatever. And but always, if you had something to say walking away, I'm like, yeah, that was a crap call. He'd egg you on more to try to talk back to him. And I couldn't stand that. You're not supposed to do that. An umpire's not supposed to try to throw off a player. That's what happens. That's what happens. And that's what Joe West did. He was always influencing the game in ways he shouldn't have been influencing him. Just be an umpire. Just call your balls and strikes. Do your little dance, you little asshole. But nobody's there to see you, Joe. Everybody's there to see the teams. And the fact that you get paid a lot of money to do. And from what I heard, beyond that, once you got him off the field, Joe West was an amazing guy. I hear once you get Angel Hernandez off the field, he's still an asshole. And that's part of the issues here. That's part of the problems with some of this. I understand why Major League Baseball can't do anything. This is actually goes into the collective bargaining agreement and unions, and the union would stand behind Angel Hernandez in every which way possible, even though the union even knows they know that this is a mess. This is an absolute mess, and that it's getting worse and worse and worse, and ultimately it's going to finally create a problem where they're going to finally push retirement. And I'm sure they're like, yeah, it's time for you to go, Angel. Bye. You sued us, you lost because you stink. And there's well, so like I said, the tinfoil hats here aside, I I would not be surprised. I think of the conspiracy theory in the opposite direction, that he is purposely calling bad balls and strikes, purposely making bad calls. And it's not just balls and strikes. Like he's not even paying attention to the swings. It's just like, it's like somebody goes that, oh, it's a strike. What was that one? He like, oh yeah, he swung it. The guy didn't swing at all. And he said, yeah, he swung at it. What do you mean? He didn't swing at nothing. Look at the replay. Now he swung at it. That's that's Angel Hernandez. It's like he's always got to be somewhere else more important than the game, and he's not even paying attention. Just not even paying attention, and it bothers the living hell out of me. He's an asshole, and until it gets resolved, it's going to be a mess. And they might be saying, hey, listen, like I said, I think the conspiracy is the other way. I think he is purposely making umpires look bad because he's not allowed to do any more playoffs. Like I said, they haven't allowed him in a playoff game since 2001. Not since 2001 has he been in a playoff game. Yeah, it's because you suck. That's because you suck. And I'm surprised that public backlash hasn't gotten far enough. I know that I have seen videos on TikTok and Twitter specifically that have said that baseball is got their hands tied here. Major League Baseball cannot do anything about this, and that the union also can't really do anything about this because they have to stand behind their guy. That it is what it is. So we are stuck with all of this. We're stuck with how bad Angel Hernandez is going to be. and he's going to continually be bad all of this time. And it's a shame, but that's why you won't see him in any major games. He won't do an all-star game again. He will not do a playoff game. They'll have him do the World Classic because who cares, really? It's like, oh yeah, that's a play-in tournament or whatever. Just not going to matter. Not going to matter at all. and and when they play baseball in the Olympics, you won't see him. You won't see him there either. I'd be willing to bet that they specifically will not have him on any umpire crew in the Olympic Games because that's not a union thing. That's not a union. They just pick out the best guys that they want, and they're going to be the ones that get paid to do it. And they're not going to have him out there because it's an honor to be chosen to represent the umpires in a playoff game. It's an honor to be chosen to umpire a World Series game. It's an honor to do an all-star game. It's an honor to be in the Olympics. Whether you're a referee, whether you're an umpire, whether you're a player, whether you're anything, you're a coach. It's an honor to be in the Olympics. And ultimately, he's not going to be there because he sucks. Because he sucks. And he always has sucked for a long time now. For a long time. And like I said, it's just that's why nobody when he does these things, everybody's just like, what am I to do? What am I to say to this? This guy's a douche, and he's going to continue to be a douche. And you get outbursts every once in a while, like Schwarber, who's just like, you're bad here, you're bad here, you're bad here. You don't know this way, this way, this way. It's a friggin' mess, and you're a piece of shit. That's what he is. He's a piece of shit. So we're stuck with Angel for as long as he's in baseball, and I don't think he's going to retire anytime soon. But I think they're going to try to force the issue as best as possible to get him out as quickly as they can. So, other things that are occurring here, obviously, next week we have the draft, and we're having all these different situations occur. Uh, You know what I keep saying? I want to talk a little bit about this. I keep seeing now these pundits is what I'm going to use. These people who no, I could tell are not even sports fans. That's what this is occurring. Like on TikTok and a little bit of Instagram and a little bit of Facebook and social media in general. These women who have no idea about sports, but now know Caitlin Clark and are so, oh my God, she is only making $78,000 this year and $358,000 over 4 years. And, you know, Stephen Curry makes more in one game than she's going to make in her 4 years. And these people know nothing about sports. They're trying to say, "Oh, well, listen, the WNBA has been around for 27 years, so let's go back to when the NBA was around for 27 years and see what they made, and that's what the WNBA should make." Of course, the WNBA doesn't make any money at all. These teams don't make any money at all. Every team that is owned by an NBA team, and that NBA team loses money on the WNBA. So they're doing everything they can to try to keep women's sports any bit relevant whatsoever. And now you've got people that know nothing about sports, that know, hey, there's this woman out there called Caitlin Clark, and we're going to get on her coattails like we did Megan Rapinoe. Who said that we should make all this money, blah, blah, blah. We should get paid like the men. Let's get paid on the same scale that the men do, blah, blah, blah. And then ultimately, she got they said, okay, you want to get paid that way, you get paid that way. Wound up getting paid less. They wound up getting paid less because, oh well, we got to get paid on the same type of scale that the men do. Well, the women get paid on a higher scale than what the men do in comparison to the league. That they get, I think it's like, I know that the men get paid 51% of the revenues. You know, and that's why some of these salaries are ridiculously high. The women get paid 51% of the gross. They're not the revenues of the gross. You know, the NBA, uh, I think revenue was $10 billion, and the WNBA, I think it grossed 200 million. 10 billion, 200 million. Now, again, this is not her fault. This is not Caitlin Clark's fault. Caitlin Clark is going to get paid what all these other women get paid, as she should. She needs to be whether it's bringing relevance to how women's sports are looked at in comparison to men's sports. That's possible. Nike just gave her was it $12 million deal, $15 million deal. Caitlin Clark ain't going to go broke anytime real soon, and the money that she's making in the WNBA is pittance in comparison to what she's going to be making with at Nike, with State Farm, with Gatorade, and all these other stuff. And they're going to ride her because why? Because she's wholesome. She's wholesome. You know, Megan Rapinoe could have done something better, could have done something a lot better, but she was an asshole the way she did it. She was just whap bap bam wham 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 wham. I'm gonna keep my purple hair. And I'm gonna bitch and cry, and we gotta get paid this way, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that, and then ultimately cost all of her friends and all of her teammates money. And then when it came down to it, she shit the bed on the field and chose to quit on her team. That's what actually happened. So that's why you didn't see Team USA. She didn't go off with a gold medal or a win in the World Cup. She went off as a loser because that's what she was. She was a loser. Caitlin Clark is actually more wholesome about the way she's doing things. She understands the game a little bit. Now, she's making a lot more money than most of the other women in the WNBA because she's going to be getting all of this stuff. But she is the one that is now forced to carry this torch. So she deserves a little bit more of this. Now, does that mean that the other women don't deserve it? That's not what I'm saying. That is not how I'm saying that. What I am saying is that it's up to everybody else in the WNBA to market it better. They need to do things better to be able to get more money to come in, more revenue to come in, more sponsorship to come in. That's what needs to have happen. The NBA has been doing this. They've been marketing their superstars. They've been marketing their people. Caitlin Clark is the first, I mean, maybe since Dawn Staley, has been the first girl, woman to come in who has a Michael Jordan, a LeBron James, a you know, a Black Mamba, even. Like all of those guys. That this is the first woman who's had a very similar style name that she has been anointed the carrier of the torch here. And when you carry the torch, it requires a lot of responsibility. And with that responsibility, she's been handling it very well. She's been handling it very well in college when, like, with everything that was going on, all the smack talk that people were doing about the LSU players playing with the Angel Reese and all this other stuff, all of that stuff, she held that with grace. She's like, yeah, we lost. We weren't good. It that's why I appreciate Dawn Staley doing what she did about giving her credit because Dawn Staley knew. Dawn Staley was one of those carriers. She was one of the carriers of the torch. And it at the time, social media wasn't as big a deal. So, or it wasn't as strong an influence. So she didn't have the ability to do the things that were happening and she did. This is now different. This is a whole different scenario here. I hope that the WNBA decides to use Caitlin Clark in the right way and make others. You got to get, it's not just Caitlin Clark's show. You have to get others. You have to get Angel Reese to do some of this, and not with attitude, with conviction, maybe. Like, you can't, this is not an ego thing. This has got to be, hey, listen, I want you to come watch us. I'm going to have a rivalry with Caitlin Clark for my entire career. That you're going to always see the two of us go up against one another. And that rivalry should bring in a lot of money, not just for Caitlin Clark, not just for the owners of that team and the owners of my team, for the entire WNBA. And that this has got to start to be real, that they got to start to do this and market this like the NBA does, like the NFL does, like baseball does. And that's how they'll start to get more money coming in. That's how more money will start to appear for these women. And then, because if they're not going to get paid on the court, they have to get paid somewhere else. And that's where you're going to have to teach them the social media aspect. Teach them how to market themselves, how to make themselves a brand without it being ego driven. Cannot be ego driven. It's got to be real. It's got to be, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to teach you guys how to market yourself, but keep it wholesome. Wholesome. I mean, and I'm not going to compare myself to any athlete, but the reason why anybody follows me, doing my thing, is because 98% of the time I'm wholesome. I'm rooting on my team. I'm critical of my team. I don't badmouth other teams. I want my team to beat your team. I'm going to say that my team's going to beat your team. But when I lose, I don't say that, oh, it was the ref's fault. Oh, we got cheated, blah, 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 blah. I don't do any of that. It's not about that. I'm wholesome. And you need to teach that these ladies to be wholesome as well. And when they start to show that, and when they start to show some of their human side of things, I think more people will go to those sports. I think that you'll see more money come into the WNBA, and you'll see these salaries start to rise. It's not hard. It's not simple. If it was easy, this would not be something that we're even talking about. But ultimately, it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take everybody doing this. And like I said, I've got no love for Angel Reese. I could care less about her. You know what I mean? I could really care less about Caitlin Clark. I'm not, there's not women's sports in my world here in Philadelphia. Like, they're talking about maybe bringing a Philadelphia team in here. When they do, I'll start going. But until that point, it's hard to get involved with women's sports. We have a women's professional team here that I've been trying to do something with, and because I'm a guy, I'm already looked at as part of the problem, not part of the solution. When I want to be part of the solution, so I want the women to get paid more. Do I think that they'll ever make the status of men? Maybe one day, hopefully. But as of right now, they're nowhere close. And the only, like, you gotta cut your teeth. And you could say they've been trying to cut it for 27 years. They haven't been doing it the right way. And it's time for them to start to make the jump to the 21st century and use social media in the right way. Start making these actual, and like I said, Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, that first game should be a monster game. Should be, on major television network, watch everybody watching. That's how that's got to be done and proposed. And you can't just say, oh, well, we're going to show it up there and show a couple of commercials and hope people watch. You got to build up to it, and it's got to get built. And that's not going to be easy. You can't just throw a couple commercials out there and think that everybody's going to buy. So that being said, it's been a long time since I've done a 2-hour show by myself, but I'm glad that you guys stuck with me. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate all of the messages here. Hopefully, you guys will be back tomorrow, because doing 2-hour shows sucks when you're doing it by yourself. But I appreciate the fact that you guys are here. I had a lot to say, and I've been harboring it for a couple days. So thank you for hanging with me all day long. And we'll be back tomorrow, same time, and we'll get hopefully the whole crew out here to talk some sports, and to tell me that I've got you know my takes were a little wackadoo or something. Tell me something. But in the meantime, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.